Hi, this is Bill Gesowich. Today I want to talk to you about the single-page application features of a Blazor Server app. Now, as we've been talking, Blazor WebAssembly is a client-based application, and that's not available yet. It's still in preview. But Blazor Server has some features and benefits that I think you might be interested in, so I wanted to take the time to go through that. The agenda for today will be I'll demo the app and the network traffic that you see in the app that I'll talk about. Then we're going to go through the app and we'll look at a couple of the dialog boxes and the confirmation message that comes up, how I sort columns, and most importantly, how I don't write one line of JavaScript at all and we still see the benefits. Now this video is a little longer than I had originally planned, so what I'll do in the description is highlight the timings on different sections so you can go to that piece. I also took a slightly different approach. I wrote the application and I'll walk you through the code, the different sections of the code. We're not going to be writing it during the video, but if you want me to go back and maybe create certain sections, please let me know in a comment or an email, and I'll be happy to put together something like that. But I found this to be pretty effective, but it is a long video. And then finally, we'll talk about a Blazor component library and how you can take some of the components that we used and actually share those across through a Nuget package. That's pretty exciting as well. Okay, a couple more things. At the bottom there, you see the GitHub repository. I'll make the code available there and put that in the description. And there's a great resource that Microsoft made available at that link below. I'll also put that in the notes. And I would encourage you to check that out. It is Blazor WebAssembly based, so it's showing you how to build a Blazor WebAssembly app, but as you know, the component structure is still very familiar, and you'll see some of the patterns that I used here there. So let's take a look at the app that we're going to create today. I'm sitting here in the traditional startup for a Microsoft templated app. There's the home menu, and I've added a people tab. So let's click on that, and you can see that it populates with a list of people, and we have an Add Person button here. We also have this little icon next to first name that sorts the list. So by clicking on Add Person, you just get a little pop-up that says, I'll call this Kazoo, and click on Save. You can also click on the name of somebody, edit it, and save that. Notice that. You can click on a person, start to edit, and click on Cancel, and say, are you sure you want to cancel? Yes, I'm sure I want to cancel. Nothing gets saved. But let's go ahead and save that. And there you go. Pretty basic app, but wanted to show some things, some spa features of Blazor Server. Now, let me just show you one other thing before we jump into the code. If I go and inspect, turn on the developer tools, and I go into the network settings, let me clear this first. If I reset the page or refresh the page, you see we get a number of different downloads from the server, our person, the bootstrap, some of the icons, and then we have this Blazor thing here we'll talk about in a second. But now when I click on Add Person, notice nothing changes. When I type in Dino2, keep an eye on the right, nothing changes. When I click on Wilma T, save, nothing changes. Click on Cancel, click on Yes, still nothing's changing. So what this is showing us is that the pages are not refreshing as we're making these changes within the browser. Now, since this is a Blazor Server app and Blazor is still communicating back to the server, you'll see information. This is the Signal R connection. You will see data going back and forth here. Once you move to WebAssembly, you won't until you need to get data or save data, but right now you will. So I'll show you that real quickly. See those binary messages? Sometimes they'll pop up, yeah, just like it just did. It's popping up to keep that WebSocket communication alive. But when I click on Wilma, some more messages, T, and then, you get more messages. So there is communication going back to the server, but as you can see, it's very, very responsive, and it's certainly not refreshing the page. So let's go into the code and talk about how we did this application. I will leave this here because I'm going to come back and reference it periodically. So back in Visual Studio, here's the SPA features solution. We have SPA features, which is the main program with the .NET Core server, the API, and right now the Blazor Server pages. I did create a shared Razor component library. We'll talk a little bit about that. So we're going to go into these two projects, and then we have the database set up, the DTO, the server, and the client. I'm not going to go into those. We went into those in previous videos relative to how to set that up. If you have any questions, let me know, but you'll have the code available. And I am using a SQLite database here. It's actually right here. So you can see that I'm actually saving data out to a database. So let's go into SPA features. A couple of areas I would like to go into. Let's go into shared for a second. Let's look at nav menu. As you can see down here, I have a people link, and it's going to a person page. And then that person page is over here under pages. If you notice, I have a page person here. I inject the person service. And a couple of things to take a look at. First, we have the add button, add person. We have a table that loops through the people and populates the list. And we have a template dialog. Actually, this is a component. We'll talk about that. And then we have the code. So let's start with the add button, and let's talk about what that's doing. So as you can see, we have a button. I'm using some Bootstrap code here, Bootstrap classes. We have add person as a button tag, and then on click, it's calling add person. So let's go down to the add person dialog. The add person method. And add person is setting show person dialog equal to true, and selected person is a new person. So let's take a look first at what show person dialog is. Show person dialog is a Boolean, private. And if we look where we use that, we're using it here on the templated dialog. So let's take a look at this first. Let's dive into what this is. The templated dialog is, it looks like, as you can see, it's in SPA features .component library .templated dialog. So we're going to take a look at that, and it looks like it accepts a parameter of show, and we're passing in show person dialog. So let's go over here to the SPA features component library, and let's click on templated dialog. First thing we want to note is we have a parameter here of show, which, as we showed here, we're passing in that parameter of show person dialog. And as we showed, when you add person, the first thing we do is set that to true. So true comes in here, and the HTML says if show, which is the parameter, which means if show is true, show this. And it's setting up just a very short div, a dialog container class, and it looks like this is a parameter being passed in, but that parameter defaults to the word dialog, so we didn't pass in that parameter, so it's a class of dialog container and a class of dialog, and then there's child content, and I'll talk about that in a second. So what this is doing is just setting up some CSS to provide that dialog box that when we click on add person, this shows up. So the CSS for this is actually in the, if I go back to Visual Studio, go back to SPA Features, www.root, CSS, Insight, down here at the bottom, you see Dialog Container, and here's the CSS for that. A little animation when it comes in, and here's Dialog. So that information is in the CSS file in SPA Features. So you define that from the consumer, and the dialog is right here. So now how do we get, if we go back to the application for a second, take a look. How do we get this information in here? The first name, the last name, and the buttons. Because all that's doing is putting all what we've looked at so far is just putting this dialog on the page. Well, going back to the code, if you notice we have a child content, and what happens there is, if I go back up to templated dialog, if you notice in here we have PersonEditor with some additional parameters. Well, since templated dialog is kind of a standard component, we put that over here. We may want to reuse that for other projects, and I'm going to show you that at the end, how you do that. But I put that in a separate component library, a separate project. But PersonEditor is really specific to my use case, so I put that just in a components folder. So here it is here, PersonEditor. And what's that doing? Here's some of the HTML. And let's scroll down here. And let's look. We've got a couple of parameters that get passed in. There's an event callback, so when the save button is pressed, and when the cancel button is pressed, and then also the person, which is a person DTO. So going back to person page, when we call PersonEditor, we say this person is equal to the selected person. Well, what is that? Since we clicked on the add button, selected button is equal to a new person DTO because we're creating a new person. The save pressed goes to save person, and that's down here. So when save person is pressed, we come here. And when cancel pressed is pressed, we put cancel updated. And that is right here. So we'll talk about those when we come back. Let's go to the PersonEditor. Let's go up to the HTML. This is pretty straightforward. We've got a header tag with PersonEditor. We're using an edit form as we talked about in the validation videos. The model is this person, which again, this person is the name of the parameter that we passed in that's got the person DTO. On valid submit, we call save clicked. Saved click is down here, and what saved click does is just basically invoke the event that we set here, the save pressed event. So what this is doing is just calling the save pressed event in the consumer, which is the person page. So going back up, we see here's the first name label, the first name binded input text field, the last name, and then we have the buttons. Since this first button is a submit, and that submit will cause the validation to run and then will cause the onValid submit. Again, we talked all about that in the validation videos that I have posted, so if you want more information, please go check those out. And so that's what happens there. And then on a cancel pressed, what we do is we say show alert true. So that means that you press the cancel. And what is show alert? So you can actually have a name of a method here, or in this case I have a lambda expression because it's so simple. Show alert equals true is a private variable that I initially set to false. What show alert does is it pops up this component. As you see, show alert is show the alert is a parameter, and there's show alert there. And what that's doing is when I click on cancel, it pops this up. All right, so let's go to the code again. For show alert, we have a parameter that we're passing in show alert. The alert description, are you sure you want to cancel? Here it is here. Are you sure you want to cancel? We're passing in button 1 label is yes, button 2 label is no. When you press button 1, it calls cancel pressed, which cancel press happens to be here. And then on button 2, it says show alert false. So when show alert false, that will actually get rid of the form and get rid of the dialog, because now show alert is false here. And so if I click on button 2, which is the no, it gets rid of the show alert. Okay, click on cancel. Are you sure you want to cancel? Yes. And yes said cancel pressed. Cancel press calls this, which then was actually set within person page. Here's cancel press, it was cancel update, and cancel update is down here. Whoops, cancel up is down here, and it says show person dialog equals false, which says show person dialog. So this templated dialog goes away, and we go back to the main form. So that's what's happening. So now let's go to show alert. Show alert is in spa-features.component library. So we'll go over here to show alert. And you'll notice we wrap the HTML in a templated dialog. So I'm actually using the templated dialog for this. We pass in show the alert, so that is basically the parameter we're passing in. And then we do change the child CSS class because we want an alert dialog instead of a regular dialog. We want it to look a little different, and that CSS is also in site.css. If I scroll down a little further, there it is. A couple of color changes, and I changed the width just to make it look a little different. So going back to show alert razor, it's just showing the alert description, which was a parameter passed in. And here is the button 1 pressed and the button 1 label. So we're passing in the label and the button pressed alert. And when all of that happens, it goes back to PersonEditor and it calls the appropriate methods here. And then based on which one was pressed, it either goes back to the person page or it will just get rid of the dialog here. So that's what's happening. And that's how we put the person dialog and the PersonEditor dialog and the show alert on the screen using C#. Once again, we're not using any JavaScript here to make these various actions happen. Let's go back to person page. So that was the add person, and now we have the table, and the table has a header, and then the person information here. I want to talk about two things. First of all, that was the add, so let's talk about the update. In here, we're looping through the person's list. That person's list is populated here in onInitialized async. It calls the API. That's right here. And then we sort the list. One thing to note is as we go up here, notice that when I populate the first name field, I actually put a button next to it, and that's to show how to update the person. In this case, we're just looping through the people, and I call update. If you click on the person's first name, I call update person, and I pass it in IDX. Now we'll go to update person in a second. I just want to talk about IDX. What I found was I initially had put I in here, and what it appears is that when you do that, it passes that by reference, not value. So I was always being populated as the 1 plus the count of the number of persons, and then I was getting an invalid index out of range. So I did a little research, found out that just by doing it this way, assigning it to a local variable, putting it in here, that takes care of it. Because what we're doing is we're saying update person, and we want to update the person that's at position IDX in the list. So let's go down to the update person. Here it is here. We pass in the index. We say show person dialog true. We've talked about that. And then we make selected person equal to a new person DTO, but then we populate that with the information from the current person DTO. And the reason I do this is because in case it is canceled, I want to not make the change in the list. Okay, so we do that. Talked about that. Now let's go to the sort. Here in the header for the table, I take the first name, and next to first name I put this sort button, sort clicked, and I pass in the sort order. Well, first let's talk about the sort order. Sort order is a private of type sort types, which is a global enum. I have that defined here. And the enum has no sort, sort ascending, or sort descending. So we go back to person page. That's sort order, and I set it to sort types.none initially. And then what happens is on the initial load, I sort list, sort types is none, and I go to sort list, and based on the sort order, it's either none, I just sort it by ID, sort ascending, I sort it by first name, and sort descending, I sort it by first name descending. And that's how we do that. Going back up to the header again, you see sort button clicked is sort clicked. And so when sort button clicked, it goes down to sort clicked, and all that's doing is going through the different enums and saying sort types.none is sort types ascending. So if it's none and you click on it, it goes to ascending. If it's ascending and you click on it, it goes to descending. And if it's descending and you click on it, it goes back to none. So that's what we're doing there. There's a couple of other ways to do that, but this is a little clearer to see what I'm doing. And then if I go back up here, all of this is wrapped in a sort button component, which is local again to SPA features. It's kind of a specific feature of this application. So I put that over here under components, and we look at that, we double click on that. And the only reason I did this was because I didn't want all of this HTML stuff kind of muddying up the page that we were just on. So here it looks for, it's a button click. Oh, and one thing, some of you may be asking, why is this not an anchor tag versus a button? The anchor tag has the href, and because href you really don't define, there was some unpredictable behavior, so I found that using button with a button link works a little bit better. On the button, you have an onClick that calls sort button clicked. Sort button clicked is the event callback that's in the person page that we just talked about. And then we pass in another parameter of sort order, which is of type sort types. And we basically do a switch to show the minus icon, a sort ascending icon, and a sort descending based on the value of sort order. And that's really all. I just didn't want this to kind of mess up or muddy up the person page, so that's why I created that one. So now you see how it sorts. Again, all of this without using JavaScript. It's pretty cool. Let's go to the application for a second and look. So first click puts the sort ascending icon, and it sorts the list. Clicking it again does descending and sorts the list. Clicking it again goes back to the by ID. So that's how that works. Pretty cool. So one other thing I want to show is, let me close the project. Let me close the application for a second. Let me kind of clean this up a little bit here. I'll get rid of spa features for a second. And if you notice, we have spa features component library. Now, when I created this, I went up to the solution. I added a new project. And here I looked for Razor. And see this Razor class library? That's the one I used. That gives you a couple of things out of the box. We could certainly create it, but it created some things here. If I do properties on it, it's still a .NET Standard 2.0 library, but it did bring in some dependencies that you need in order to do a component library, and here they are here. So it just did a little bit of the work for us. Now, the benefit of doing this is let me close these. Let's just close all documents to just clean up. If I right click here and I pack, like we've seen before, that creates a Nuget package. And I do have a local feed, so let me copy that to the local feed. As we talked about before, it's in the spa features component library, bin, and then debug because I'm coding it. Here it is here. Copy. And then here's my local feed, Nuget feed. I'll paste that in. All right, so that's all copy and pasted. Let's go back to Visual Studio. Let's remove the component library project. And then what we'll do, let's go to the spa features. Let's go to the person page. Notice we've got a red squiggly here because it can't find the template right now. We've got a lot of different things going on here. Same thing with the person editor under components. Person editor also has an issue with sort alert. So let's see what we can do here. If I go into dependencies, I right click, I manage NuGet packages, I go to my local feed, and I browse. There it is here. I install that. I accept the various messages. Close. Let's take a look. That resolves. Here resolves, everything's resolving. So now I have no more errors, 0 errors down here. Let's run this. Here we have the app. We go to people, populates with the list. I click on add person. I'll just say Bill. Save. I get added to the bottom. I click on the sort. That all works. Empty. Here we go. I click on Bill again. Let's change it to Billy and say no. Let's cancel that. Yeah, we'll just cancel that. Didn't change. Bill, Billy, save. So everything's working exactly as it was before. So that's pretty cool. We've got a pretty responsive spa application written in Blazor Server using C# only and no JavaScript. Thanks for watching, and please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or comments. And as always, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.